welcome to the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center, home of Ebony Repertory Theatre. Let's give it up for them and our host this evening.
I'm Ashley Alvarado, Director of Community Engagement. I gotta remember my title. At KPCC, Southern California Public Radio.
And I'm John Cohn, Managing Producer of KPCC in Person. We've cleverly hidden some logos and branding around the venue. If you're lucky enough to find it, you get a prize. By a quick round of applause, we always like to do this. We're public radio, we test. How many of you are KPCC listeners? Excellent. Thank you for listening.
Let's keep this going. How many of you are attending a KPCC event for the first time?
We're here because Southern California is full of untold stories, but even more that go unheard.
So we launched Unheard L.A. last spring to change that. It started with an invitation to community members to share their stories in whatever format felt natural to them.
Now our focus is on the substance of the story and the way it relates to life in Southern California.
And because of the tremendous support we received, we're back this year to share more Unheard LA stories of real people amplified.
Each show is unique, and as these experiences are recounted by those that live them, they inevitably include a range of observations and perspectives. As a non-advocacy, nonpartisan media organization, you know where I'm going. Just a reminder that what you hear and see today is reflective of our courageous community storytellers and not necessarily an endorsement by KPCC.
Thank you to the California Wellness Foundation for supporting this project and making Unheard LA possible. Our next show will be in Downey on March 11th.
Let's give it up for California Wellness. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Ashley.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, we're going to see all of you in Downey on March 11th, right?
Great, and then our next show is in Baldwin Park on April 7th. We'll see you there too. Great.
To find out more about these shows and to share your story with us, you can go to kpcc.org/unheardla. You can engage with us on social media using the hashtag UnheardLA, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at KPCC in person.
No show would be complete without a host. So please join me in welcoming the artistic director of Watts Village Theater Company, native Angelino, and our Unheard LA host, Bruce Lemon.
Hello, hello. Oh, what's good, LA? What's good? I am Bruce Lemon. I am your host, tour guide, bus driver, Metrolink conductor, the cop asking you for your pass. You got your Metro card? I'm asking you at a live show. The world is watching. Yeah? What's your name?
Carson.
Carson. Where are you from, Carson?
I live in Pasadena.
Live in Pasadena? All right. Hey, LA, can we say hello to Carson, who lives in Pasadena? Yeah. Who else is in the house today? Was anybody here at our very first show out in Whittier? Anybody? Or streamed it online? How about Hollywood? Okay. And downtown LA? Oh, and everybody else is brand new. That's fantastic. Who here is from Mid-City? Ooh. Oh, there's a lot of stories around here. You know, I'm from LA, and every time I have people coming out to visit, they always want to go places like the Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles over on Pico, where President Obama went. You know they renamed his meal that he ordered after him? Yeah, it's the country boy. Now it's 3 wings and a waffle. It's now called the Obama Special. Yeah. And I order it every time. Ray Charles' studio was here. RPM. It's where he recorded his America the Beautiful. Yeah. And speaking of history, the very first African-American Oscar winner, Hattie McDaniel, lived right here in Mid-City. The history of this town is filled with beautiful music and amazing stories from some of our most epic storytellers. Just like our Unheard LA storytellers from season 1. Here we got a few of them in the house. They're the first ones to step on stage and bless this mic. Can we hear it for them? Yeah. We are so glad to be back here with you today, sharing some space, sharing some stories, and getting to know more about ourselves as we listen to others. You know, everybody wants to be heard. Everybody needs to be heard. That's probably why Los Angeles has seen such a wide range of marches and demonstrations, mostly last year. And while most are coming together presenting a united voice on a common message, it's still very possible to feel all alone on a crowded street in one of the world's busiest cities. Please welcome to the stage our first storyteller of season 2, Johanna Middleton.
As much as I will always remember the power and pride I felt marching through Pershing Square as part of the 2017 Women's March, I'll also remember the complex and emotional journey it took to get there. The day of the march, I woke up at 6 a.m. while it was still dark so I could be ready for the 2 friends that would be coming to my house. We would lift together to the nearby metro station and then attend a poster-making brunch hosted by another group of women. Then, fully united, we'd stomp all over the white supremacist patriarchy. This was the plan. Around 7 a.m., one friend, Adrienne, told me she was running late and that she'd meet me with her friends at the brunch. Shortly after, the other friend told me that she was opting to go to the march with her grad school friends. I swallowed the momentary hurt of abandonment and rejection. You know, the one that whispers, "No one likes you." That one. Then put on my coat and made my way over to the Hollywood and Vine metro station. It's fine, I thought. You'll get to the brunch and everyone will be there and you'll march it out. Upon arrival at the station, I was greeted with a line of about 30 people, all abuzz, loading their new tap cards with the giddy aloofness of babies finding the square hole for the square block. As I took in the genitalia-focused signage and the plethora of Patagonia pullovers, I began to feel even more self-conscious about my solo status. Although we were all going to the same march, protesting the same event, I felt so essentially different, at least on the surface. I turned my Black Women Matter sign over, feeling too annoyed in my solitude to invite specific attention to my personal perspective in this communal dissent. Amidst the sea of bright pink hats, here I was, a Black woman protesting an America that in my books had always been a disappointment. I was determined to arrive at the brunch as soon as possible, but the line moved slowly, and as time ticked away, I considered doing what many newcomers into the station were opting to do, skipping the tap card option altogether and just walking through. Somehow the turnstiles weren't being staffed, and it was easy enough to just pass through the barriers. I considered it, but then thought, no. It would be just my luck that I'd be caught. And me getting caught would be different than, say, a 50-year-old white man in his blue North Face vest getting caught. The ever-present systems of privilege. I realized my own privilege, though, when I noticed a few folks in line did not carry signs or sport iconic pink hats. Some people were clearly going to work. I noticed a Latina woman behind me without march materials and asked her if she was on her way to her job. She was. Meanwhile, a white woman in front of me cackled with a friend. She wore a Rosie the Riveter-style bandana with little lipsticks and mirrors on it. Minutes later, she greeted 2 also white friends who joined her in line. Instead of apologizing for extending our wait, she turned to me and mouthed, "Thank you." To make matters worse, she and her friends laughed loudly about how if anything went down at the march, they'd be fine since her boyfriend was a cop, of course. I turned to the working lady behind me and made small talk, until again, Rosie the Riveter turned around. Another friend had arrived to cut in front of us in line. "Thank you," Rosie mouthed. I resisted a deep urge to hit her. I took a breath, resigned. Soon enough, I'd be eating donut holes in community with women who'd understand why it was triggering for a Black woman to be cut in line by a group of white women on the way to a women's march. It was finally my turn. I let my new friend behind me go before me. She was now late for work. But before she could begin the loading process, a white man with his crisp white dress shirt usurped the machine, frantically loading his own tap card. "Excuse me," I found myself pitifully yelling, shaking with shock and a deep-seated anger. "I have to go to work," he barked. "So does she," I shouted, but he had already completed the action. He'd stolen our time and would get away with it. Finally, I loaded my tap card. I was livid and lonely. I walked down the stairs and found even more people all waiting for the same train, everyone joyful, smiling, some shouting chants as if it was the first day of camp, and even more irksome, everyone seemed to be in a group. Families, friends, lovers. I could feel myself starting to cry. I tried to find a quiet spot on the platform. Impossible. I opted to stand a couple feet behind two black women, the first I'd seen the whole morning. Noticing my tears, one of the women asked if I was okay. Asking if I'm okay is the worst thing to do to me when I'm starting to cry if you aren't prepared for a flash flood of snotty emotions. All I had been swallowing came spilling out. I unloaded between full-on sobs. I was supposed to go with these other girls, but they bailed, and now I'm going alone, but I'm meeting people there, and I'm late for this brunch, and I just don't think I've processed it all since the inauguration, and upstairs there was this white man who cut me, and this other woman in line, and I'm sorry, I think I just need to cry. The black women looked at me with disturbed pity. It's a happy day, sis. Just remember it's a happy day, one said. I nodded, thinking this was not at all helpful. I continued to cry silently. The train finally came, and it was packed to the gills. There's no room, people shouted from the crowded train. Some on the platform attempted to force their way on. I did not have the will nor the strength. I decided to just wait for the next train. Another 10 minutes or so passed, and that train arrived, just as full. It was time for a new plan. After all of my metro drama, I decided to hang it all and just take a lift. I headed back up the stairs and out to the entrance of the station where now literally all of Hollywood was now gathered waiting for lifts. I called my own lift, which apparently was going to cost me around $45,000 with the current surge because capitalism. I didn't end up selling one of my kidneys to be driven downtown, though, because my driver never arrived. He almost did. He even called to tell me that he was there, but he was not. And when I tried to explain where I was, he shouted, what, and then just hung up the phone. I wondered if the good Lord just simply didn't want me to attend the march. I made my way back down the train station. I would force my way on, my first act of resistance, literally. Upon arriving back downstairs, I heard other marchers on the platform discuss going in the other direction and then staying on. The idea was a light in the deep darkness in which I found myself grumpily wandering. So I squeezed myself onto the train between a young white mother and her precocious daughter and an older Patagonia'd group of white women friends who were all perfectly lovely. But still, I could not engage. I closed my eyes and breathed through the 30-minute ride. We arrived. Pershing Square Station was even more crowded than Hollywood and Vine had been, and the energy even more heightened. I reached for my phone to find my friends. Alas, the mass of people created a problem for cell service, and nothing would go through. Until my phone rang. My dear friend Rebecca was calling. We're dropping you a pin. I received the text and walked toward the pin. Walking towards pins is already difficult for me, let alone under duress, so I also prayed. According to the pin, I had technically arrived, but they were nowhere to be found. I wandered the vicinity, crazed. They were so close and yet so far. Until I heard, Johanna! There they were, Rebecca, Kim, Adrian, and Adrian's friends. Oh! I cried, as in I literally started weeping. You have no idea how happy I am to see you guys. I was worried I was going to have to march alone. Of course not, said Kim. We were going to wait right here in this spot until you got here. And then I cried some more, because this was the spirit of community for which I had been aching since 6 a.m. Now I was ready to shout and yell. But only once I'd found those who made and saved space for me, those who told me that they wouldn't leave me behind, those who told me that they had my back. The girls fed me leftover donuts from the brunch, and we made our way to the larger crowd of folks marching deliriously around downtown. The energy at the Women's March was electric, but I was only able to plug into that electricity once I felt plugged into community. It felt radical that these women would literally hold space for me after a morning of feeling isolated and apart. I left Pershing Square that day empowered and ready to take on these times with my community by my side. In LA, it can be easy to feel isolated in this huge sprawl of a city. So I will try to hold space for others. That can be just as radical as marching in pussy hats.
Our city is a living, breathing organism, shifting on tectonic plates, sliding histories into chasms of casual disregard. Our next storyteller knows what a changing neighborhood looks like, but he's never forgotten his way home. Please welcome to the stage, Alex Alfaro.
I grew up all over LA. So by the time that I was 29, I had averaged one new address per year. But there's one address that I always went back to, the house on Edgware Road. See, I grew up in Echo Park, before gentrification kicked my childhood friends and their families out, before the massive buyouts of families that had been there for at least a generation. This was back in the day when Diamond Street Gang and the Headhunters boys would have shootouts in front of the Echo Park indoor pool. When I used to go fishing at the Echo Park Lake with my friends, but made sure to be home by the time that the lights came on, because rumor had it, that lake is where they used to dump the bodies of the enemy. This was before I was looked at funny walking down my own neighborhood, before people I had never seen before turned Sunset and Echo Park into a trendy street where people like me were no longer seen as part of the community, but rather a nuisance reminder of what it used to be. This piece is about me and the house I grew up in, the house on Edgware Road. Growing up on the edge of nowhere is where I discovered who I was going to be. Lil Chino. I was christened since the age of 3. I never truly understood why I was told to flee the hood as soon as I would be a grown-up, or at least pass for one. I was told, run away or you'll fulfill his destiny, for this is who you'll become, like Big Cheeto, your dad, an abusive addict and bum. Her voice was bittersweet like victory. Her eyes were deep with pride and misery. Her sinful mysteries were amongst her tragedies, accentuating her humanity, and mostly why it appealed to me to listen to Mercy's ministry. But what does she know about Chino, who took food out of his mouth in order for me to sleep through my stomach growls? Although tormented by regret and doubt, he carried a permanent smile as he went about. Did what she know prevent her from letting me inside her house? Allow me to play with her son too long or pity me with her spouse? A lost angel I be, who is daily captivated by my city's lost beauty, unlike how mom became captive by the love that tolerated pop's beatings daily. It had nothing to do with love. Lust was daddy's angel dust, plus he didn't wear a glove, and soon my fate was sold for a fee. Don't tell him nothing, mijo! He yells as he's hauled away to Rampart Station on Benton and Temple. Crash unit, LAPD, always playing around of who done it with daddy. He's taken around the corner from where I first taught myself to ride a bike in frustration. Countless times, I almost got hit by cars at that mobile gas station. Don't worry, Pops. The secret of your dope stash is safe with me. This and more is constantly asked of the boy who climbs the níspero tree. That's where the hammock would be placed all summer, you see. That's where I'd eat low quats while observing the dope spot across the street, daydreaming of future adventures without any cares, in this place where innocence, like cash and rations, are scarce. Every day the depression grips hearts, ever fears. Weakness is a no-no, so go conquer your fears and play under the night's dark skies. Polluted by kids' laughter and grown-up despair. Got money for booze, but not enough to spare on clues that witnesses holler and cry. Sure, I'll buy into your games and grow up on your lies. It's cool and empty in this part of the dark. Maybe soon I could preach at the bench at MacArthur Park. The smog manifests as a result of sorrow suppressed. Daddy don't need Teflon. Give him a Migra-proof vest. Fake IDs and socials to throw off INS. This was way before ICE came to replace missing persons reports where there's Reader's Digest. My life wasn't fun, but I lived for the jest. Ill-managed and ran, but I still tried my best. I was raised Catholic, but I wouldn't confess. I saw back then firsthand the church mess. Yet still, I am blessed, no more middle fingers in the air. This memory I recite is the sight my soul finds when my eyes go off and I stare. I can still see myself eating ice cream on top of the stairs overlooking the broken sidewalk, where my Uncle Manny changes a flat to a spare, charges a six-pack as his usual fare. An ice-cold Miller, tell me what can compare. An ice-cold killer snuffed him out. It ain't fair. He was beat to death till his liver ruptured. The guilty party was never captured. He died in silence. He didn't cry. Heavy crime. He died over a piece, 2 blunts, and a dime. His blood cakes up on the boiling concrete. He stares at me blankly. Oh, is it just the damn heat? While Auntie puts clothes to dry on the line, she heard the ruckus, but she lives in the lie, unaware that her brother lies still as he dies. 35 years it took to exhaust his lifeline. 35 paces away, he is saying goodbye, but she's too busy bragging about the washer this time. 35 more payments and it's all mine. Plenty more story, let me press rewind. 165 yards to the top of the hill. Pop's old Corolla struggles on its last wheel. On hot-ass sunny days, you can smell the roadkill dumped in the alley where I used to chill. Where as a child, we would have soapbox races. That's how Keith and Kix got scars on their faces. That alley is where I taught Baby G how to tie his shoelaces and where I used to get high during my teenage phases. Vista Hermosa Park has now replaced this. My childhood's not lost, it just lives in displacement. 165 north of all worry. I fight every day to not allow these memories to go blurry. Because I'm still here, homie. I just been in demand. Using my love for the hood to fuel my plans. A lost angel I be that trailed away from my land, and I know. For years I've strayed and roamed. But don't trip, fam. This here's my Rome. Built out of cardboard and styrofoam. My daughter's family still lives in that home. I still live there too, but inside my dome. Now, I'm still that little kid just writing an ode about 165 North Edgeworth Road.
Yeah, Alex. Whether you are a native Angelino or from small town middle America and just landed at LAX for the very first time with a one-way ticket and a dream, finding your community is essential to your survival. I mean, these are the people who lift you up, who make you feel at home in an unfamiliar place. They are where you are, even if they don't live next door. Our next storyteller has found hers. Please welcome to the stage, Cheryl Farrell.
I have lived in Thousand Oaks for about 11 years. Before that, I lived in Glendale, California, and I lived in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, known for the Amish. The pattern of living where there are few African Americans is unintentional on my part. For reasons of work mainly, my family has lived where we are often strangers or strange looking in our hometown. And so I have found a different type of community whose members live throughout Southern California as well as in other parts of the United States. It's a community defined by race, gender, and age. Yes, you guessed it. I live in the sisterhood of Black women over 50. No, it's not sister with an R, it's sister. The spelling representing a legacy of women who thrive in the face of negative racial stereotypes. Add ageism to the mix, we're no longer a coveted advertising demographic, even though we still got it going on and got money to spend. The sisterhood has many accomplished members. Some of them are known by their first name only. I call them the Great O's. There's Oprah, Viola, Michelle Obama, and there are others. Pioneers include Anita Hill, whose 1991 congressional testimony first brought to light sexual harassment in the workplace. And there are millions of my community members who live without celebrity. We are business owners, philanthropists, scientists, and hold just about any profession you can name. We are often unsung heroes as nurturers from way back. Our community was counted in labor statistics long before blacks and women could even vote. Why? Because our mothers' mothers were nannies to other people's children. Sisters have become experts at code switching, that is, presenting a non-threatening countenance to people who don't know us. We are actors, not always by profession, but by nature, by necessity. One personal example of code switching comes from when I lived in Glendale. We had a lovely Spanish home near the foothills, and I so enjoyed the tree-lined streets and well-manicured lawns. I made a habit of jogging in the area on Saturday mornings. For most runs, I threw on sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. But I soon realized the mere sight of a black person running toward folk made them change route, as if a primal urge to do so. I experimented by starting my run on the opposite side of the street, and it still happened. I tried dressing up for my runs. I bought coordinating jogging outfits, and I ran without a cap. I even put on makeup to have a smooth complexion, and I bought tiny little earrings to signal I was a woman, maybe less of a threat. Still, they crossed the street. One woman who pulled her Mercedes to a corner mailbox exited her car, and as I was approaching, she turned around and activated her car lock. Boop, boop. The chirp was the signal that I made her uncomfortable. I was tempted to wear a sandwich sign during my jogs that read, "I'm no threat, have large mortgage in the area, and current on my payments." My experiment continued. I decided to walk instead of run. In addition, I invited a white female friend to join me. I didn't let her in on my undercover strategy. To my surprise, not one person crossed the street. Many of the passerby greeted us, "Good morning, nice day for a walk." As I recall, I even got close enough to compliment one woman's beautiful baby in a stroller. Now, when I clued my walking partner in on the experiment, her take was, "Oh, you're just being hypersensitive. I can't believe it makes a difference if you're white or black and exercising." But when I told the story to my sister girl, her immediate response was, "Mm-hmm." That's code for, "Girl, you got that right." You see, with the sisterhood, there's no need to explain the triple whammy of race, gender, and age as a load to carry. And we do so as role models for our daughters. As important, it allows us to show love and grace to those who fear the unfamiliar, even in our richly diverse Los Angeles. Now, there's no annual convention of the sisterhood, but we know each other by our common experiences. If there were a convention, I imagine our theme song would go something like this. I'm old and I know it, but I try not to show it. I still got some living to do. There's a dream with my name written on it. There's a cloud I'm supposed to fly. Yes, I'm old and I know it, but I try not to show it. I still got some living to do. I still got some living to do. Woo. Woo.
We all experience LA through a unique lens. That lens shifted for our next storyteller when she began to lose her vision and see her city in a whole new light. Please welcome to the stage, Bella Cosper.
When I moved to LA 15 years ago, it was all about the stars, the glitz, and the glamour. I was a snob about sushi, and I always wore heels. After finding out I was losing my vision, I hung on as tightly as I could to the lifestyle. I had really nice things, and I made really good money, but the money dwindled with my vision. About 4 years ago, my vision spun out of control. Everything I could see in my small tunnel was a smudge and very distorted. I couldn't find work I could do with that vision, and I was homeless for a month. I found a low-income apartment under 200 square feet in Koreatown on the side some people told me to stay away from, but it was all I could afford. And it was then that I learned what this amazing city is all about. There I was, out of my element, feeling like a minority in my community, and I couldn't tell who was who unless they had a dog, a cane, were extremely tall, weird hair, or something that really stood out that I could remember. I had moved here from the South and was pretty proud of the ways I'd embraced LA's diversity. When I moved out of my comfort zone, I realized how much more I had to grow. I caught on really quick that the 100-plus unit building I was staying in had crack, gangs, a bedbug infestation, and people off the street were sleeping in our stairwells and laundry room. The front doors were broken open and just wide open. The women in the building warned me to never go to the laundry room after dark or early in the morning. I didn't ask why, but I followed their advice. 2 stabbings occurred. One man laid on the lobby sofa to bleed out. I prepared myself I would be robbed, raped, murdered, or all 3 before I got out of there. As time passed, people saw that they could trust me. I had no choice but to trust everyone. I said hello to everyone in my building and everyone on the streets. One man in my building started bringing my dog treats. People invited me to the dog meetup. A man loaned me a DVD of a show he rented for his kids. A man and a woman in my building drove to the food bank every week and brought back so much extra and stacked it in the lobby to share with everyone. None of these things I asked for. They just did it. I soon found myself hanging out front, chatting with the neighbors and learning how some of them ended up there. I was back in school and coming home late at night. Where I got off the bus on the corner, there was a church that loaned sleeping bags to the homeless, and these men would sleep on the steps. And I would always stop and chat or tell them good night after getting off the bus. They were my friends and my lookouts. They would watch me as far down the street as they could and tell me to scream if anyone came near me, and they would come. I couldn't see if anyone was approaching, but I would keep my mouth positioned, ready to scream for them because I knew they would save me. I depended on them. These were people that some would not give the time of day to look at, but they cared about me, and I cared about them. People on the street begging for change would stop and ask if they could help me find something, wanting nothing in return. Some would insist on walking me to my destination, holding me by the arm. Once in the train station, there were 2 men I could identify as gang members because of their bandana colors and their clothes. They were walking near me and talking, and one looked and said, "Hold up, I gotta go do something." And he came over to me, and his tone changed, and he said, "Are you looking for the elevator?" And he walked me to where I needed to be. Then he went back to his buddy talking the talk. People on that dark, empty side of the boulevard late at night, this one man with a cool bicycle, it looked like a chopper, he'd just hang out there in the dark, and he was always so nice and so courteous to me. These people protected me. Black, Latino, Asian, they took me in as their own in their neighborhood. Of course, once I had the opportunity to move back to a building I had lived in years before where I was in good with the landlord, I jumped at the chance. A bedroom, a fireplace, a balcony, trees, are you kidding me? I've been there a year and a half, and sure, it's great, but it's not the same. When I go down into Hollywood, I get harassed very often about my white cane, and it's never from Black, Asian, Latino, gangbangers, or the homeless. When I went back last year to vote, because I hadn't changed my address, I ran into some of the old neighbors in line. They invited me to their Thanksgiving feast. None of them have kitchens, but they were cooking turkeys in crock pots and toaster ovens, and they were telling me the whole menu and who was cooking what. I go back to the old neighborhood often. The tellers at the bank are friendlier, and I run into the neighbors at the stores. I really miss it there. Not that building, but that community. It was like family. I keep thinking that if I ever get back on my feet, I'll buy a house over there and put a business over there, and I will look out for my people. This is the city of angels, and it's filled with them.
You're gonna relate to this. As a kid, I dreamed of a day off school. This mythical LA snow day with no strings attached. Yeah, never happened. But our next storyteller had an even better reason to miss school one day, and it still came with a lesson that sticks with her. Please welcome to the stage, Jelaine Lee.
I remember the day ever so clearly because I didn't go to school, something that never happened in my family. I had nearly perfect attendance, and if I faked being sick to stay home just because I didn't feel like going to school, I had to write my own excuse note to my teacher. This day was different because my adoptive mother was giving me permission to miss school. We went to the courthouse with a family friend where I stood before a judge who, by the power vested in him, granted me U.S. citizenship with all its rights and privileges. As an adopted person, it's easy to fall into the trap of playing the what-if game, but it's rarely useful. I, too, could easily have been one of the 35,000 adoptees without citizenship. Had I never been naturalized, would I have had the same educational and career opportunities? I wrote the persona poem Return to Sender partly as my way of processing what it must be like to find out accidentally that you are not a U.S. citizen, and then to live in deportation limbo. Since the Korean War, approximately 150,000 children have been sent from Korea to the U.S. for the purpose of adoption. And due to a loophole in the Child Citizenship Act, there are an estimated 35,000 inter-country adoptees living without U.S. citizenship. Some have been deported to their country of origin. This is Return to Sender. Korea exported me to America before I could speak my name. Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. Better life, education. Forever family bruises denied me U.S. citizenship. Homeless, absent high school degree, starvation shoplifts, military time served, America's promised prison land. Deported back to Korea, Incheon Airport lobby, solitary confinement persists. No welcome sign, not even a 환영합니다. Family reunions surround me. Mother's bouquet embraces graduated daughter. No arms encircle my ghost body. Korean streets handcuff my life sentence. Birthland homesickness. Leftover kimchi barely sustains. Midnight Han River bridges protect my frozen soul. Brain resists foreign language. Dula oseo. Throat chokes syllables. Language is life. Doomal. Let me survive my lifeless sentence.
People aren't the only ones with stories. In addition to hearing from our community storytellers, Unheard L.A. gives us the chance to check out places, explore neighborhoods, and find cool venues, like this one, the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. This theater, and the one that stood before it, the Ebony Showcase Theater, has served as a beacon for Black artists and audiences locally and internationally. Today, it's the home of the Ebony Repertory Theatre, committed to bringing diverse, high-quality performing arts to Mid-City and celebrating the African and African-American experience. It's fitting that we're here during Black History Month, or as is known in the Netherlands, Black Achievement Month. We should steal that, by the way. Now, we normally spend these 28 days in February learning about things that we didn't know were invented by Black people, like the stoplight, or the gas mask, or the ice cream scoop, potato chip, your grandfather's pacemaker, mailbox, ironing board, this microphone, just to name a few. You should Google it. It's also important to discuss what has and is happening in our neighborhoods, to our friends and neighbors, to our brothers and sisters in the neighborhoods that you drive through every single day, like Lamert Park, which is not too far from here, or Compton, or Watts. These cities provide the backdrop or the beat for our next storyteller to detail his upbringing and his first interactions with the people charged to protect and serve. Please welcome to the stage, Dante Mitchell.
It was a dark morning in Compton, California, and I found my 9-year-old face submerged in the moist dew of my best friend's lawn, while 2 officers held us at gunpoint. I remember the rush of adrenaline, followed by feelings of disdain towards the officers. Vivid images of my grandma, Victoria, detailing the death of her adopted son, Daryl, at the hands of Compton policemen decades earlier, flashed through my young head. 31 shots. There I lay, a child with my hands and my feet sprawled out with the feeling that, to these cops, my life is dispensable. From that experience as a young child, I adapted a biased opinion about cops. Growing up, I had family and friends that would join law enforcement, and I respected their decision, but never aspired to join the force myself. I would be stopped by the police, and on most occasions, I would get frustrated and pull what some cops would label the race card. Fast forward 17 years later from that cold morning in Compton, I find myself a straight male bouncing in West Hollywood bars. The area of West Hollywood is a prevalent LGBT community, and as a bouncer, I was not always people's best friend. Some conceptualize that when kicking them out, I was attacking them for their sexual orientation, based on their personal experiences with people who look like me, a straight male. This experience put me in the shoes of some law officers that would stop or detain me if I had committed a crime. When stopping me, they were simply just doing their jobs. The year is 2016. And life as a young Black American continues to be hard to savor. There have been a number of high-profile police killings of unarmed Black and brown American citizens over the last half-decade. A routine traffic stop by officers for a broken taillight somehow lands me, a backseat passenger in the vehicle, in jail for the evening. I am released from LA's 77th Division after being held for 6 hours. It's 1 a.m., and I'm late to my overnight shift as a security officer near USC at a local children's clinic. I arrived to my shift at 2 a.m., and After walking halfway to work, I still have a head full of steam. Emotions and feelings that were harboring for a lifetime came out through a piece I wrote that evening. The short narrative would become the verse for my song Any Day, urging young men in my community to stay out of the streets and continue to create a better life for themselves each day, for it can be taken away at any moment. Spark a flame, they could hardly match us. Lamert parked the track up, rhymes on automatic. Life's a dark path illuminated by God's light. Feeling my vibe, critics giving me 5 mics. Those ghetto birds eclipse skylight. Make those L.A. days seem as cold as shy nights. Now reporting live another shooting on the south side with tears pouring. Why was his mother's pleading outcry? Nightmares of demons cleaning out my soul. Anointed, I don't look before I cross the road. Shell toes on my right and ones on my left. On his mic, I earned stripes from putting rappers in check. My homies got scars from shoved shanks in their neck. We didn't have the money to cop, bape, and be fresh. When you hear that thunder, bolt. Cops aiming at blacks like there's targets painted red on our backs. We getting chipped, Frito-Lay. My mother always told me it would be okay, just bow on your knees and pray. But Pops always told me, Pops always told me, get your money, stay up out the way, 'cause any day, that can be your day.
"50 years ago, thousands of Chicano students walked out of several East LA high schools. It was March 1st, 1968, and their actions was the largest mobilization of Chicano youth in Los Angeles history. And that helped pave the way for our next storyteller. Please welcome to the stage, Irene Sanchez."
In the first and last conversation I had with my grandmother, it was in Spanish, a language that was denied to me as a result of language policies that would hit the Spanish out of you, and a long history of assimilation projects in the US. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had lived her life in the US speaking no English. I forced myself to learn it in my late teens and early 20s so I could hopefully one day talk to her. I went to see her a couple weeks before she passed away, and that conversation has stuck with me all these years later. In it, I told her I was leaving the area for college. She responded, "Don't forget where you come from." I had always believed that she meant to not forget I was Mexican, to not forget her. It took me leaving away from Southern California 10 years to fully grasp what those words meant. Not forgetting where I come from is rooted to the history of migration of my grandparents who moved to the US from Mexico. Not forgetting where I come from as a Chicana is tied to lessons my parents, who were born and raised in East Los Angeles, taught me about being proud to be who I am. I often say my parents were my first Chicano studies teachers. East Los Angeles and its history is tied to my family's history and serves as a classroom in understanding my family's origins and life in the US. It is for these reasons I find myself now as a high school Chicano Latino studies teacher. Coming back to these first lessons means you have to go back to where it began, East LA. Why is it that no city has ever contained the entirety of me? I come from parents who were born in unincorporated territories, undesirables. They called us, make sure you stay inside the red lines, forcing communities to form in places that weren't on maps as the power that be continue to expand and explore, making manifest their destinies on the backs of our dreams for centuries. Our dreams always fleeting like chasing a butterfly through a cemetery, trying to remember as you sit on your grandparents' graves, wondering how this came to be. Your father's family, Coahuila, Durango, Mexican Revolution pushed up to El Paso, Texas. 1930s, railroads lead to East LA housing projects, proclaiming on walls, we are not a minority. It is this house on Sydney Drive where Mexican becomes American, Mexican-American, Americanization programs taught if you do not comply, they will beat the Spanish out of you or beat you for simply being Mexican, a woman, even if you follow all the rules. Rules, something you hear your grandfather had a lot of in your mother's family as they left via Hidalgo, Jalisco. Brothers led each other north, teaching that some bonds can never be broken, and that there are things in this world that cannot be explained. Just keep your faith. Hold it close as you set down roots on Sydney Drive, where Spanish is only spoken in this home. English is for school. Remember, even if we are poor, we are never deficient, and to always hold your head high with dignity. My father told me things. As I came of age, I was 12 during Prop 187, which was followed by 227 and 209. History repeats itself, so I became Chicana, taking after him. He told me when he was 12, he marched Chicano moratorium. He ran as the cops beat everyone in sight, and he barely escaped with his friends. He later heard they killed Ruben Salazar, and for a long time after, killed activists in the 3rd Street jail. So much brutality they justified. No more, never again. My mother rarely spoke about years she came of age, but I knew had the 1968 walkouts never happened, a young Mexican girl would have never been admitted to college on the west side of LA, east side to west, a world away from I thought I could do it too. Things are harder than they seem, but I in turn traveled further than I ever imagined, asking questions while walking, more than having answers, so I did what they said I couldn't. History repeats itself until someone defies it. Undesirables, they still call us as if we don't know who we are. I'm a descendant of traveling people, always moving forward, trying to survive in occupied America. And I know, should I ever lose my way, I can go back to Southern California to find generations of dreams waiting for me to catch up with them. So pick a freeway, because they all lead back to East LA. And it is here that we put ourselves on a map. It is here I don't have to question where I belong or why I'm here. I am here. We are here to make sure certain histories don't repeat again.
Fitting in can be tough, but sometimes what makes us different makes us magical. Our next storyteller will detail how he found a community, an audience, and along the way, himself. Please welcome to the stage, Andre Echave.
I moved to the States when I was 3 years old. Wasn't my decision. While in elementary school, I understood what it was like to feel different. Here I was, this chubby brown kid, new to the country, super shy, and didn't have any social skills. Everything that's happened up to this point has made me feel small. Who I was, where I came from, even me being big made me feel small. At home, my family was doing their best to acclimate me to this new culture. Mom, dad, brother, and grandfather. In Tagalog, grandfather is Lolo. My Lolo was a magician and was my first teacher. He made sure I was instilled with the values he thought necessary. Work hard, be compassionate, laugh as much as you can, and believe in people. Fast forward, I graduate college and work for a few years at a day program for adults who are differently abled. These people really showed me that with the right mindset, you could do the impossible. I quit my job to follow my dream. I told my boss I want to be a magician when I grow up. See, when I was younger, my grandfather taught me magic. He thought it would make me more confident, improve my social skills, and provide me with a pretty cool hobby. Yeah, I was a sneaky old man. He would teach me magic, but he would hide these teachings of valuable life lessons within the lessons of magic. He said that whenever you're afraid of failure, never forget that magic is love. And if I fail to give you love, that's the best way to fail. So I started performing at different places. The Magic Castle, corporate jobs. I was even a busker for a while. Performing magic on 3rd Street in Santa Monica was one of the best times in my life. You see all these people of different ages, sizes, and backgrounds come together and enjoy a cool show. Magic. Art brings people together. I never knew my magic could have this impact. Also, I couldn't believe I get to do what I love for a living. That was super dope. So I find the open mic scene in LA. Spaces like Our Mic, Sunday Jump, and TNC. Communities that finally gave me a space to present my magic and to tell my story. I no longer felt small. Even though I found a home in these communities, I was the only magician, and I wanted to carve out my own space and establish myself within the world. I decided it was time for me to create a stage name. I was going to celebrate the parts of me that I was seriously proud of, something that encapsulates who I am and what I do. I came up with Dre Magics. Okay, so Dre, right? That's my name, and like that's what my friends call me, and I'd like to think all my friends are in the audience when I perform. Dope. Magics. So once again, it was my Lolo that inspired me. I remember he used to end all his shows with a very small illusion. Me feeling small all my life, I asked him, Lo, you know thousands of tricks. You have books, videos. Why do you always end your shows with such a small piece of magic? He said, Anak, this magics is my love letter to the world. And now my magics is my love letter to you. Hope you enjoy.
Everyone has a story. And here in LA, every other person has a script. Growing up in the shadow of Hollywood makes for a unique adolescence, and not one you see in movies. Please welcome to the stage, Akela Muncie.
I am an 18-year-old aspiring playwright who lives in Pasadena. I had a peer tell me never to use the word aspiring. She said, aspiring just means not, or if you are, it means sucky. In her logic, if I write plays, then I am a playwright. I do write plays. I write lots and lots. Nonetheless, I am an aspiring playwright. I started writing 3 years ago as part of the NoHo Young Actors Studio, which is above a workout space in between two different pizza places. I haven't come across a play written by adults about teens that doesn't feature drugs, a monologue about killing yourself, and some kind of religious scandal. This is why our teacher started the class. Even scenes written in terrible teen writing style are better than plays pretending to be written in terrible teen style. Showing people your unedited work is seriously putting yourself out there. A general no-no for the teen population. At the end of the semester, we perform stage readings of our work, a showcase to our parents to beg them to let us keep writing instead of focusing on college apps. These shows are awkward and silly and downright embarrassing. Teens yelling about obscure movies and discovering sex in online chat rooms. Teen stuff that really means something to us and, to our surprise, means something to our audience, who are also our parents. And we feel like geniuses. At the end, we always go to IHOP or Denny's. This is a shared experience with all theater students. Late nights in makeup and costumes and dried tears eating pancakes. I actually personally can't stand the pancakes at these places, but you don't go there for that. You go there because at IHOP is where the real drama happens. There's two games we theater kids play. The first being the nice game, which really is nice. We go around a table and you compliment whoever is to your right. The kicker is you can't reply to the person who complimented you. Yes, we made a game where we get complimented and have to accept it. Apparently, everyone at the table is the most talented person we've ever met. And the prettiest, and the funniest, and the smartest. Something you don't hear a lot growing up in LA. I'm 18, and I know 2 different girls younger than me who are touring internationally as solo artists. Growing up in LA, you are never enough until you are the very best. That's why we play the nice game. That's why it's so nice. Then there's the paranoia game, which is not so nice. It's like cocaine for those of us who don't do cocaine. Paranoia is a game where a person whispers a question in your ear. A question like, who is the prettiest at the table? All questions that have to be answered by the name of someone at the table. You flip a coin. Heads, they tell you what the question was. Tails, it's forever a mystery. Everyone leaves paranoid, hence the name of the game. The first time I played this, only the stragglers were left. A girl who would later attend a celebrity rehab, a girl who rebellious act against her parents was becoming a Mormon, a soon-to-be ex-Disney star who I shared a garage-turned-loft apartment with, and a few other people who were slightly Instagram famous. The questions got intense. Here we had spent an entire semester trying to create the perfect dramatic scene, and in real life it only took 15 minutes. The whole night came to a climax when one girl whispered to another girl, and she said, "That's way, way, way too mean." The asker grabbed the coin, and it flipped. Tails. We would never know what the question was until 2 minutes later when we figured it out. Who is the ugliest at the table? Ugliest. That is the most feared title as a teen. Ugly is something you can't help. Ugly is something famous is not. Ugly means undesirable, unlovable. We continued to play the game, but nothing could top ugliest. You're not allowed to be ugly in LA, especially not as a teen. Exhausted, we gathered outside. As I was texting my mom to let her know I was not kidnapped, just safe in an IHOP strip mall, I heard ex-Disney star talking to one of the girls. "How would you have answered ugliest?" he asked. The girl thought for a bit and then said a perfectly reasonable answer. I have no idea. Then the ex-Disney star, in an attempt at whispering, theater students are terrible at whispering, said, I would have picked a Kayla. I'm a Kayla. My heart sunk. He was my best friend. We lived together. We played video games together. We went to the Americana when he was sad so he could get recognized by kids together. Most importantly, I had shown him my writing. It hurt my feelings. That night I cried in a locked bed across from his. A few minutes later, he left the studio to do bigger and better things, but not before telling me that as a playwright, I was failing him. In theatrical serendipity, the day he stopped talking to me, I found out that I had won the Blank's Young Playwrights Festival. They produced my play, This American Strife, about a 12-year-old boy trying to record a podcast just like Ira Glass. It was the very play ex-Disney boy had told me wasn't good enough. To be fair, it was an awkward story about awkward kids, but in the play, an older character says something to the 12-year-old protagonist, something I wish someone had said to me. Being 12 sucks. 12-year-olds suck. Suck however you want. I think it applies to me. I think it applies to all of us above the workout space in between two pizza places. I'm 18 now. I'm an aspiring playwright. And maybe using aspiring does mean I'm a little sucky, but hey, I've got time.
At about 25 weeks into development, a baby begins to respond to its mother's voice. We did not rehearse that. Once it's in you, it's locked in. There's no escape. You can hear her full laugh of love a mile away, and I guarantee before you leave here tonight, you will know my mom. Over there somewhere. Here to share the voice that is locked within her, please welcome to the stage, Erika Ray.
Llueve, llueve, caen y caen las gotas del cielo. Llueve, llueve, como te quiero, mi amor. My mother wrote this lullaby. She would sing this rocking her children to rest in her arms. My mother, mujer migrante, always moving, always strong. My mother, born in Argentina, daughter of an Italian immigrant who fled Italy after seeing his entire family put into concentration camps during World War II. My mother does not speak Italian. Those are lands and stories her father wished to forget on new Latin American soil. He married an Argentine woman, and they had my mother. Migration is deep in their blood, deep in my mother's, deep in mine. My mother, lover of dance, in her 20s went to live in Salvador de Bahia, Brazil, where she learned to samba and learned a word she would decades later teach her children, saudade, a feeling of nostalgia for something now distant, unreachable. My mother, mother of three, in her mid-30s decided to make the bravest choice a mother can make, to pick up your life, leave behind your support networks, put a new dialect on your tongue and a new culture in your step, a decision to move to the City of Angels, for she refused to have her children live in the streets of Buenos Aires the way she had. I have the stories of migration running deep, deep, so deep in my veins, you'd think that's what keeps the blood streaming. I, born in Buenos Aires, land of football sagrado, melancholic compositions, romantically political literature, Playa de Mayo, where grandmothers gather to this day to find their grandchildren, children stolen from los desaparecidos, the young people murdered for speaking out against dictatorships. Buenos Aires, where, yes, we say pollo instead of pollo, land of chimichurri, facturas, and asaditos. Buenos Aires. I, at age 7, wore my favorite sparkly Barbie sweatshirt, Chiquitita's tape in my sister's Walkman. I boarded a long plane. I had never been on such a thing. And after floating through the clouds, I landed in the US. My mother bundled with anxiety, but unbelievably powerful and strong. I didn't know what it meant to be an immigrant. I did not know what it would mean to be undocumented in this country. I knew there was a something about our family that I was not supposed to ever mention or discuss to keep us safe. Safe from what, from who, I didn't know. I don't think my mother ever fully explained with words because after all, how do you explain to a child, to anyone, what deportations are, how a life can be illegal? How? A year into being here, I had quickly adapted to my life here. I knew the language, I knew the games to play during recess, I knew what the Spice Girls were. A year into being here, my mother sat the family down. She was holding her heart in her throat and in her hands. I could see it. She said, "El tío Memo se está muriendo." My uncle was ill and dying. Are we going back home to take care of him? And we asked. We can't, she said. We asked why, but she couldn't respond through her heartbreak. I learned then, 8 years old, what it meant to be undocumented. I, very much my mother's daughter, have used music and dance to get me through life, to move with the joys and the pains of life. I, like my mother, love the ocean. See, we go there to soothe these diasporic blues, to fill ourselves with exactly what separates us. Miles and sea, so much miles and sea. They say the immigrant narrative is one of push and pull, ni de acá ni de allá, neither here nor there. That home you left will never be home, but neither will this one, though you've lived here for decades, every day. So why did your family come to the US? We came here for a better life. See, I'm just in line for groceries. I don't have time for a history lesson or to ask you, why are you not asking why people have to migrate to begin with? Oh, and of course, the infamous, have you tried applying for citizenship? Yeah, like they've just discovered a path we millions have been sleeping on this entire time. So fragmented I began to feel by these empty questions, by these layered and complex answers, by the news, by families I know being separated by deportations, by the fears in my parents' eyes of having the same happen to ours. And I tried to be whole. I tried my hardest, but how? Tell me, how do you stay whole when your very blood is stretched miles away from you? So far you can't touch them. So far you can't see them. So far you can't grow with them, die with them. Miles and sea, miles and sea. You learn to celebrate weddings, graduations, births from afar. You learn to mourn from afar. You learn to, you're forced to, or maybe you just adapt. And all the while you create a life here. What else can one do? But these borders and the status, they keep telling me what I can't and can't do. In my teenage years, I learned that this status will affect whether I can see a doctor, whether I can attend the colleges I've been admitted to, whether I can work, drive, vote, board planes. These borders, I begin to feel them on my skin and in my mind, digesting in my organs and unshakable from my tongue. I consume them, internalize them. I pray to God I had not become them, but sometimes maybe I had. Sometimes I can't breathe with this as our reality. And then I look to the name of my hometown, Buenos Aires, the good air. And I breathe, and I invite you to do the same as well. Slowly recalling that everything is cyclical, everything is temporary. Now grown, my mom is not always beside me, and so I rock myself to sleep singing a lullaby I wrote. I sing, "This is temporary, though it seems everlasting. I know this too will transform, and it too will echo once I learn what I was here for." Somehow, I've always known this. Don't ask me how, I just do. Somehow, I know I'll have a daughter, and I will teach her to be proud of the migration stories, deep, strong rivers in her blood. Mija, es así. We mujeres migrantes, we organize strategically, radically, compassionately. We start with our community, our people, the issues we are at the forefront of, and we work there, build there, we connect with the youth there, planting seeds of revolution and self-love. We read books written, typed, created by women like us. We begin to feel attuned to whether we want to share our stories or not, and with whom we share them. We commit to feeling what we have to feel. We cry, laugh, and make sure there's time to be silly. We dance, reclaiming our curves and our hips. We feed ourselves the food our body needs, taking dripping bites of fruit as juicy as our lips. We give and receive hugs, the real hugs, you know, the ones that feed your soul. We learn of plant medicine, sewing new connotations to brujeria, and we learn to rest. We learn we can be vulnerable and powerful, water and fire, because yes, we are that complex, and yes, that is part of our magic. We live by our values, love in our values. We commit to this process for life, not just a phase, not just a post, for life, for lifetimes, for beyond the progress we may or may not see in our lifetime. And I'll say that again, for beyond the progress we may or may not see in our lifetime. See, I have migration running deep, deep in my veins. It keeps me whole. Mi mamá me enseñó. My mother taught me. We act and live from this place of wholeness, and we pass that on. Past, present, and future, hand in hand. 3 generations will walk to the ocean where, like we've always done, we will soothe our diasporic blues. Miles and sea, miles and sea, miles and entirely whole. We will rest in my mother's lullaby. Llueve, llueve, caen y caen las gotas del cielo. Llueve, llueve, como te quiero, mi amor.
We like to think of Unheard L.A. as a creative, communal approach to a tour of Los Angeles. But our next storyteller actually gives tours of Los Angeles. Please welcome to the stage, Mike Songson.
In my mid-20s, I wrote a piece, I'm Alive in Los Angeles, that captured the spirit of growing up in LA and finding my way as a young adult. As the years went on, I worked as a poet, a journalist, a tour guide, a teacher, and eventually a professor. All along, I was studying the city, making friends in every neighborhood, and building community. I'm still doing that to this day, but today I'm reading a piece called I'm Still Alive in Los Angeles, and this is the sequel. This is the piece after getting married, having a couple of kids, and teaching for a decade. I remember when my grandfather drove me around L.A. in the 1980s, and now I'm driving my kids around like he did me. This piece is about place, memory, and how it all really shaped my identity. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, even as the price of rent rises and gridlock strangles central arteries. I'm old enough to remember disco parties and the build-up to the 1984 Olympics, and news reporters like Jerry Dunphy and Hal Fishman. I remember when Fernando Valenzuela was a rookie. Years before I read Wanda Coleman and Bukowski, my first L.A. poets were Chick Hearn and Vince Scully. Then I read Mike Davis and Carrie McWilliams and watched The Gospel of Huell Hauser, looking at things that aren't here anymore and recalling former glory like Ralph Story. I'm still exploring from Panorama City to Pomona. I'm still alive in Los Angeles as I build high-speed trains down Crenshaw and out into the San Gabriel Valley. Changes in transportation for the new generation foreshadow the nation's transformations as millennials on bicycles call for the return of the Garden City. Green in the 21st century city is a matter of survival. Witness the revival of the wetlands. The riparian watershed is a sentinel for sustainability. Unbridled consumption is a liability. Observe residents of Angel City playing their part to restore nature's heart. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, from festivals to funerals, baby showers to weddings. Each generation ever more beautiful. Reality is ever musical. Throngs of people mix and match in the multicultural mosaic. All these people coming together to call L.A. home. The community is a poem in progress called Los Angeles. The angels in a city singing synchronicity from Central to Century City. Olympic was 10th Street, and Pio Pico was the last governor of California when it belonged to Mexico. He was born a Spanish citizen. See the city's end soaring to Satori on a Saturday morning, circling the Evergreen Cemetery or hiking up hills in Culver City. I'm still alive in Los Angeles as mamas monitor laundromats. From Lankershim to Long Beach, I walk the long streets. From Magnolia to Manchester, Rosemead to Redondo Beach. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, though there's no more open space. Most of the wetlands have been replaced by condos, Trader Joe's, and makeshift dog parks. The expanding corporate heart charts a frenzied facelift of never-ending Christmas, but only a few are on that wish list. There's a generation of kids on Snapchat, and commuters want that fast track. Alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, thanks to family, friends, and poetry. The past, present, and future of my city gives me energy. Untold generations of history, from Biddy Mason to Chavez Ravine to Toyo Miyataki, punctuating the power of place, turning the page, sharing authority, because we all share the story of this city unfolding. There's no hierarchy. We all belong to this city. It's oral, her story. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm alive in Los Angeles. And today I drive around L.A. with my son and daughter like I once rode with my grandfather. There's no more Perinos or the Brown Derby, but there's still Fosselman's, Coles, Philippe's in the pantry. My children spill ice cream in the back seat with me. Together we are alive in the city of destiny. I'm alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. The neon crowns glow as the haze hovers above another nuclear sunset. I'm alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. L.A.
Woo! Let's get all of our storytellers back out on stage. We are up here to share stories that typically go untold and to release some of that magic that happens when we all stop and listen to one another. And now, we want to listen to you. How'd you like today's show? Let us know by texting Unheard L.A. to 63735. Check your spelling. Make sure, don't let autocorrect get the best of you. Let's hear it for the whole team. And also, thank you to Quetzal for use of his track Unbound, Sweltos from the album The Eternal Get Down. And thank you to all of our generous Unheard L.A. storytellers, Ebony Rep here at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center and the California Wellness Foundation. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and whatever you do not leave here with your story unheard. Bless you. Good night.